Hello, this is Alan Wheeler on my YouTube channel where I discuss usually spirituality and or tarot. And today's topic is the Serpent Staff of Moses, Science, Symbol, or Sacrament. And that kind of strange title is just to say that I'm looking at three approaches, three ways of looking at miracles or magical manifestations. And in thinking about this, I considered three different ways to organize the scientific approach, the symbolic approach, and the sacramental approach. One way to do it would have been to go from the most physical explanation to the least. So the purely physical, naturalistic explanation, of course, would be science. And then the sacramental, it's kind of half and half, as you have a kind of the purely spiritual mixed with the non-corporal, or the purely physical mixed with the purely spiritual in that approach. And then the least physical would be the symbolic, where it's pure abstraction, purely mental. The other approach would be something like the Fraser did in writing The Golden Bough, his collection of mythologies. And he kind of posited this evolution that we've evolved from a magical thinking to religion and now to science. And I would see it more now. It may be that from age to age, you have a different consensus reality and different things predominate. But looking around, I more see that all three coexisting. So you've got the magical mindset, you've got the religious or more spiritual, and the purely naturalistic or empirical. And these are growing right alongside each other, sometimes in the same person. So I didn't want to organize it that way. What I've chosen is going from the most natural or naturalistic explanation to the most supernatural. So in my case, I'm looking at science and then symbol, and finally the sacrament, where it's more literally supernatural. So let's start with science. And again, we're looking at the story of Moses and his staff that transforms into a serpent. So if you remember, Moses is out in the wilderness, he's encountered the burning bush, and he's told to throw his staff onto the ground. When he does, it becomes a writhing snake, and he's commanded to pick it back up, which he does by the tail, and it becomes a staff again. And if I remember correctly, this feat is duplicated by Pharaoh's magicians in the Egyptian court. But that's the basic miracle or magical manifestation that I want to consider. So the purely scientific approach would be to say it was just an illusion or a trick, if not entirely fabricated. So a natural explanation might be that someone throws or sees a staff on the ground, a snake appears and distracts so that it's a kind of misdirection, it's out of the vision. And when the snake slips away again, the eyes rest on the staff, and it has the illusion of transformation, and it's picked up once again. Similarly, you could just say it's a trick, like a magic trick, and that the magicians in Pharaoh's court deliberately switched out serpent for staff to dupe the devotees at the time. So whether it was an illusion that got passed on into a myth, into a story, or a deliberate trickery, this would be the scientific naturalistic approach. Number two would be symbolic, and this too is a bit more of a modern approach, but this would just be looking at the imagery of the serpent and the staff as symbolic. So some examples would be, here's a tarot card, the Two of Cups, and you can see the serpents wrapped around the staff here of the caduceus. In the Magician card, the serpent is seen here as the Ouroboros, the snake that is feeding on its own tail is wrapped around the magician's waist as he holds a wand here. In the alchemical tarot, the magician actually holds a caduceus. The snake's wrapped around the staff here, and he's the Hermes or Mercury represented here in the Magician card. And in that same deck, the Alchemical Tarot's World card, there's the Ouroboros as the wreath, and she holds the caduceus, the staff, the winged staff, enwrapped in snakes or serpents. So the one way of looking at this is the association of the staff and the serpent is a reminder of kind of a deeper truth. And the snake in and of itself is both masculine and feminine, as the snake straight is like a staff or sword, in the male symbolism, but it also writhes and twists and turns more fluidly, like water, which is symbolic of the feminine. So the snake and the staff give us a picture similar to yin and yang, or the combining of opposites, and so would have been popular with in alchemy and that kind of symbolism. Now, as the pure symbol becomes a story, it engages more of the human side and more of a full experience. So when we consider the whole story of throwing down the staff, we get a sense or a feeling, kind of a embodiment of this idea that there's an act of faith in having to pick up that serpent to see it transform. Or it could be looked at as the staff is a symbol of power, and that is released and given up as it becomes wild and twisting and turning. And after that surrender or kind of a consecration, it's picked back up again. So it carries a theme or meaning in the story. Now, as it becomes more of a shared experience, it becomes more mythic. And so the literary idea of myth is, and I'll quote this from a handbook on literature, narrative and dramatic embodiments of a people's perception of the deepest truths. So these deep truths are enacted or embodied in these stories. Now, when it becomes even more literal, this is what I'm calling the sacramental approach. And so an example of this would be Protestant Christians look at the wafer and the wine as symbolic of the sacrifice of Christ, the body and blood of Christ. But more traditional Catholicism saw a real transubstantiation taking place, where the priests actually caused the elements to become the body and blood of Christ. So this is the sacramental idea that there's kind of an incarnation where the spirit becomes flesh, manifested physically. And so I think this can have kind of good applications and shadow or dark applications. And so something like a communion or a blot rite or ritual might be a good way for like-minded people to join together. The darker approach would be something like, and again, bringing in Moses and the serpent, the superstition of snake handling. Now, I only think probably about 100 churches still practice that today, and I believe it's illegal as well. But still, there are some people who actually take a Bible verse that true believers will handle serpents, and rather than seeing that symbolically as representing darkness, evil, or demons, they literally believe the snakes embody demons, and they hold them up during the services as a sign, as a miraculous sign of their faith. So this would be the sacramental approach. So this was my look at 3 approaches to miracles or manifestation, and using the serpent staff of Moses to look at the scientific, symbolic, or sacramental approach. So please, thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, hit the bell, or comment to help get the algorithm up, and this gets videos out to those who might be interested. And as always, I hope you will find connection with people in your life, with online community, and on your spiritual path, whatever that may be. Take care.